Hello everyone, this is Naresh IAS Academy digital platform for the IAS mains exam. Now I am going to discuss next part on General Studies question paper 1. I have completed the General Studies question paper 2 for IAS mains exam through the 20 videos, and these videos have uploaded on the YouTube channel, so you may take help. And again, this is my effort to cover the entire GS question paper 1 through the 20 videos. And you may contact for offline classes. We cover the each GS question paper within the 20 days. And today's my topic is Indian National Congress. I will explain the two different approach of the INC or Indian National Congress. One is the impact of circumstances of World War I over the Indian politics or the freedom struggle. And second, the World War II. This is the major part, so you must know the various aspects of this. And it covers different events. The period of the World War I, 1914 to 1918, and the World War II, 1939-1945. Okay. We can analyze the role of Indian National Congress, which was established in 1885, and since its establishment, the Congress led the freedom struggle. World War I and World War II are landmark, and these were not directly related to India that time. However, they affected the entire system of Indian life. So first, in what circumstances the Indian National Congress provided support to the British government? You know, the World War I, in which Britain and his allies countries defeated finally Germany and its allies. And at the time of World War, this was the Mahatma Gandhi and Bal Gangadhar Tilak, on the behalf of Indian National Congress, they absolutely supported the British government in exchange of some political or civil rights for the Indian peoples. However, British government for getting supports from the Indian peoples orally assured soon to provide some concrete rights. And at that time, this was absolutely a cooperative nature of Indian National Congress. But when the World War was over, then the nature of British government became the more reactive, and this was the reactionary approach, and British government simply provided a Montague Declaration on 1917, and the declaration was legalized under the Government of India Act 1919, and under which the councils at centre and state level were expanded, and the representation of Indians was increased, and through which the direct election system was first introduced, and simply British government tried to satisfy Indian a specific kinds of diarchy rule, and this was a gift to the home rule movement, but it made more aggressive or disappointed the Indians. And on the other hand, British government made a strict law which is known as the Rowlatt Act in 1919, and the act was resulted into Jallianwala Bagh massacre on 13th April 1919. So these two kinds of reactionary nature of British government made the entire Congress to revise or to rethink their methodology and their philosophical basis, and simply Mahatma Gandhi now introduced the Satyagraha as a techniques and as a philosophy to protest the British ideology. And now Gandhiji turned against the British government and adopted the politics of non-cooperation, and who started the non-cooperation movement in 1920. So simply UPSC is trying to asking some questions, and who have already asked in the previous years, what kind of new hopes, aspirations, ideologies infused in the Indian politics by Congress or Gandhiji. So this was the politics or philosophy of Satyagraha, and it includes the two main pillars. One was non-violence as a tool for political agitation, and the self-reliant and patience or courageous. So Gandhiji introduced these elements first before the Indians and trained the Indian peoples to make these elements the part of their life, and through which Gandhiji getting support of the Indian peoples. And at the same time, Gandhiji himself enjoyed these elements, and Gandhiji started the creative work, and through which who expanded the role of non-violence in the Indian rural areas, urban areas, and the concept of courage. And this was the Gandhian style, way of life and simplicity which made the Congress a popular organization, and now the movement of Congress became the movement of masses. Earlier, simply it was made effort by the extremist leader to drag Indian National Congress from the metro cities or from the upper classes or middle classes to the grassroots level. But this was simply a effort for some extent. But at the time of Gandhiji, it was completely expanded at the grassroots level. Now you have to understand what were the techniques of Satyagraha, why Gandhiji infused into the Indian National Congress, and what were the reaction of Indians. And second thing is, why Gandhiji became against the Britishers, and why Gandhiji started now the politics of non-cooperation through his movement. Earlier, Gandhiji was a staunch supporter of the British system. So what were the circumstances who made Gandhiji as antagonistic of the British system? So simply it is analyzed within the World War I. It means we can say it was a clearly political deceit made by the British government against the Indians. The Britishers got victory in the World War I, but failed to provide all the rights or expectation to the Indians. At the same time, now you have tried to understand what were the other angles in the freedom struggle in the 1920s or the second decade of 1920. This was the Muslim League. Initially, it was a political organization. Since its establishment in 1906, and soon the Muslim League acquired the nature of a communal organization, and now the Muslim League started to demand a separate land or separate geographical territory along with maintaining their political rights within the British Empire. So then the role of Muslim League, how the Muslim League started politics of pressure on the one end over the British government, or on the other side over the Indian National Congress. And was it the failure of Indian National Congress not to understand the far-sighted or the far-reaching impact of Muslim League? So, in the second decade of 1920 became important due to the role of Muslim League. You must know the different aspect of the Muslim League in this phase. After the 1920, we can see the two important events. One is the emergence of communism in India. However, it was initially a imported ideology. On the instruction of Russia, the communist leader now started this movement in India. This was the Manvendranath Roy or Narendranath Bhattacharya, who established India's first communist party in 1920 outside the country in Tashkent. Okay, but later on it was established in India. So then what were the pillars or ideological aspect behind the communist movement? So now you should try to understand the role of communism. One is, communists ideologically were against the British system, because British system that time the symbol of capitalism, and you know capitalism emphasized the concentration of wealth and means of production into hand of the capitalist or industrial classes, and on the other hand communism centralized these resources into the hand of the laborers or the workers peoples. And on the other hand, the role of communism regarding the Indian National Congress. Congress, to enlarge its social base, organized the Indian peasants, farmers and the labor classes or workers, and through which Congress was trying to get the important support for running their political movement. And now the Communist Party targeted these organizations. Mainly they tried to make their dominion over the workers or the laborers association, and this was fight between the Indian National Congress and Communist Party. And the second angle is the revolutionary movement. The first, you should deeply study what were the causes of the rise of revolutionary movement in India. Was it the disappointment of the ideology of moderate or the extremist group of the Congress, or the revolutionary movement was an alternative to the Indian peoples to get the independence from the British government? And in the 1920s we can say the new dimensions or scope were acquired by the revolutionary movement, and how much extent the revolutionary movement could succeed to present a great threat before the British government, and how the British government never tried to pardon the revolutionaries, and this was the single agenda to shoot at sight and immediately destroy the revolutionary movement. And the relationship between the Congress and the revolutionary movement. At that time, Congress was working under the Gandhiji, and now Gandhiji was adherence with the non-violent movement and the courage. So, the role of revolutionary movement, we can say, the counterbalance by the personality of Gandhiji, and this became the important factor. The revolutionary failed to make a strong basis with them, and Gandhiji could be considered in this regard. After the 1920s, again we can say the Gandhiji now raised the different type of the issues to increase the social basis and to enlarge the social basis of Indian National Congress or the national movement. Now Gandhiji started the salt satyagrah in 1930, and this was the first time when Gandhiji now started to violate, to breach the illegal or exploitatory laws made by the British government. There were thousands of laws made by the British government to regulate or control a different aspect of the Indian life, and now Gandhiji through the salt satyagrah breached the law of salt producing or the salt making. Before this, simply Gandhiji announced the no tax campaign. However, it was a violation, but now this was the clearly, because Gandhiji allowed the Indians to produce and to making the salt from the ocean water. So this was the new approach in Gandhian ideology. However, this was not beyond the techniques of satyagrah. Simply, satyagrah is a technique to violate illicit or unethical practices of the British government, and the different acts were that time identified absolutely against the Indians, and Salt Act was one of them, because this was the only monopoly of British government to make salt from the ocean water, and the other peoples were prohibited. So definitely it was illegal. How could British government ensure their monopoly over the sea or oceans? These were not the private property of the Britishers. And next thing, now Gandhiji started the civil disobedience movement with the salt satyagrah, and the civil disobedience movement definitely was considered the next step to the non-cooperation movement. Now you have to compare the non-cooperation movement 1920 and the civil disobedience movement 1930. So this is a continuation of the political movement, however there were some changes, and the Congress now raised the different kinds of issues. And what was the reaction of British government after the 1930s? Definitely British government now tried to revive their policies and to make contact with the Indians and to discuss Indians on the various issues and to satisfy the Indians. We are not working against the Indians. And at the same time, British government appointed a Simon Commission, and it was sent to India in 1928 to discuss and to get advice from Indians on the various issues. But the Simon Commission was failed because Indians did not talk with the Commission, and the Commission itself made the recommendation to British government, and on the recommendation of the commission, British government organized the 3 round table conference 1930, 31 and 32. The Congress only joined the second round table conferences. So it means what we are seeing, the Congress was continuing its freedom struggle. Congress was regularly demanding those civilian or political rights never conferred by the British government, and now British government also were trying to satisfy the Indians. And now this was the first time when British government agreed to discuss with the Indians on the various issues, and through the round table conference, first time Indians were given the equal status. Now they can talk, they can discuss in the presence of British Prime Minister, and this is the British monarch. Before this was never happened in the Indian national movement. Okay, so this was a great achievement of the Indians. And the last aspect is how the World War II affected Indian National Congress. So now you have to understand the one difference. World War I, when the Congress absolutely supported the British government, but during the Second World War, Congress rejected any kinds of support to the British government, and on that issue, Congress itself ideologically divided. There were the different pillars. One was leading by Gandhiji, second by the Subhash Chandra Bose, third by Jawaharlal Nehru, and this was the Rajagopalachari. Finally, Subhash Chandra Bose quit the Indian National Congress, or we can say Subhash was pushed from the Indian National Congress, and ideological differences between the Gandhiji and Jawaharlal Nehru, and Rajagopalachari quit the Congress in 1942, because now Congress did not make mind to repeat its mistake which was made during the World War I. Congress or Gandhiji conditionally supported to the British government if government should agree to accept the different condition of the Indians, and the most one of them was government should have to orally or in the written form announce the date of independence, but the British government did not make any such declaration. Simply government tried to get the Indian support, and government repeatedly declared we will provide dominion status after the World War II, but this was not a accurate date, and Indians did not support it. Subhash Chandra Bose was trying to start a big movement against the British government to get the political benefit of the circumstances of Second World War, because against the British, this was the Hitler, the dictator of Germany. Subhash Chandra Bose was absolutely trying to getting support from the Hitler, and Subhash Chandra Bose at that time was not considering what is ethical, unethical, legal, illegal. From where, anywhere he was trying to getting support, but now Gandhiji still was clinging with this value, the non-violence, ethical politics. So this was the ideological difference between them. So then the Second World War affected the Indian National Congress, because for a long Indian National Congress did not start a big movement, and this was too late when Gandhiji started the Quit India movement in 1942 August 8, and this was too late, and that time British government got a lead in the Second World War. And now what was the position of revolutionary movement and the communist movement, or the role of Indian Muslim League? Revolutionary movement was completely ended till the Second World War, as we can analyze their role. since the emergence of revolutionaries, it was the least scope for their success, because the Indian society did not support, and the British government clearly made his agenda suited site, and the role of communism was twisting according to the circumstances. And now the freedom struggle definitely affected by the ideology of Muslim League, because freedom struggle was continued by Gandhiji and other leader for getting independence to the united India. But this was the angle of Muslim League. They demanded the two nations and the partition of India. So you should try to understand the various event, ideologies or incident between World War I and World War II, and how much extent Congress was affected, and what were the various ideologies within the Congress, and what were the outer elements like the entrance of communism on the directions of Russia, and what was the approach of the British government. Okay, thank you.